Hello and welcome to episode 71 of the Foundry Roundtable, the podcast exclusively covering the Foundry for Star Trek Online. I'm your tame Foundry author, Drogan1701. Joining me tonight, he's a lumberjack, but that's okay, Greendragoon.
Chop chop.
And we have our guest with us tonight, Foundry author Dave JL99. Welcome.
Hello, guys.
And that's our crew for this evening. It's a little bit smaller crew than we usually do, but that's okay. We do have some news, and the big news today is that we got a tweet from Captain Gecko just last night saying that there will be no new features added to the Foundry with the expansion, but there will likely be new assets at or near launch.
I'm really excited to hear this, just because, I mean, it seems like from this point on that Cryptic's kind of realized, oh, assets aren't quite as bad as we thought they were going to be. We can do this. So it sounds like they're actually kind of making it an effort to say, okay, let's kind of keep up on this.
Well, it actually sounds to me like exactly what they did with Legacy of Romulus. I mean, we didn't get any new features with that, but we did get the, like friendly Romulan mobs and Alachi mobs right away as soon as the Foundry came back. So yeah, I expect it'll be stuff like that.
And of course, we know that Tumor Boy is also working on some new asset additions of his own.
New asset additions. In fact, he talked a little bit about one earlier this week. Waterfalls.
Yeah,
he's adding waterfalls. He said only ones from New Romulus, so they'll match the purple water, but that'll be okay. So we can all use purple water for waterfalls.
I think we can work with it. And it sounds like it's in two parts. One part is the water actually falling, and the other part is the splash it creates when it hits the water. And that'll be nice because then we can adjust the height of the waterfall.
Mm-hmm. I tell you, one thing I plan to do with that is I've got this great Romulan city map that I built. It's partially built anyway. And I think I'm going to add some waterways and waterfalls to it. I think it's going to be a very cool addition.
Yeah, definitely a lot of cool things we can do with it.
Mm-hmm. I think he's adding some other new Romulus assets as well. It's something that lots of people have asked for. I know Pax Federatica in particular would be very happy because he's got some missions that I think are set on New Romulus. Another bit of news that probably people who are on Twitter have seen, and maybe if you're not on Twitter you haven't, is that StarbaseUGC group kind of got together and sent Cryptic a bunch of cupcakes. I should be very clear that this is not a bribe. We were just thanking them for going above and beyond, especially those 4 or 5 devs who have been using their own time to do stuff for the Foundry. We just wanted to show our appreciation.
Yeah.
Seem to have been very well received. Let's see. No new builds put on Tribble, unfortunately. So we haven't been able to see anything new there, and really about the only thing that is on there other than the level cap increase is the Intrepid model, which is fantastic, but I think perhaps a little bit unfinished. I think there's some things like the ablative armor that hasn't been adjusted yet, so it doesn't match the new model, and I think like none of the other Intrepid style models have not been made to match yet.
There was also one thing. I mean, I don't think we covered the. I think last week, we were still talking about the fact that we were expecting a Tribble patch, and there was a bit of a Foundry news with that Tribble patch that eventually came out in the form of a fix.
Oh, that's right.
For the Olympic bridges, which this is actually something that's been on the Master Foundry bug list for a while. But basically, in the map as originally was or currently is in holodeck. The floor of the map is actually intersects with the bottom of the workable area, and it causes a error to pop up asking if you want to beam up because you've reached the edge of the map. And anyone who's flown out to the edge of the Sol system or anything has kind of seen a similar error message. But it was really annoying because it was like intersecting with the floor, so if the player stepped onto different areas of the floor, it would trigger this error message. But that apparently has been fixed, and the borders of the borders of the map have been reduced so it doesn't intersect with the bridge floor there. Unfortunately, we can't actually test any of this because the Foundry on Tribble has been locked down, presumably to prevent us from accidentally seeing any of the new Delta Rising hotness coming.
Yeah, possibly, considering that that has happened several times now.
Yeah.
But even if there's nothing new on Tribble, we did get all sorts of info this week, especially regarding T6 ships. We learned all about T6 ships. And we learned what's going to be happening to our T5 ships, or what we can do, I should say. We will be given the choice to upgrade those, and they get some of the features of T6 ships. And, you know, T6 ships still retain a couple of unique features. Specifically, I think an extra BOF station for these new type of bridge officer, whatever that turns out to be.
Yeah, I think it still remains to be seen what exactly the difference between an upgraded T5 ship and a T6
Absolutely.
ship is in a more practical sense. So for now, I'm
really,
kind of just
we can
waiting.
only really figure that out when it gets in testing and when we actually see the ships in action.
Yeah.
But it'll be very interesting.
Definitely.
Certainly provoked a lot of discussion.
Out of curiosity,
And that's putting it nicely.
Out of curiosity, I mean, you have a lot of characters yourself, Drogon. How many of them are going to go for Tier 6 ships? How many of them are going to stick or upgrade their Tier 5 ships?
All right. I have 9 characters. And I specifically did this so I'd have one of each class for each faction that will be available to do the T6 ships. They don't have really ships that I want to keep all that badly. And 5 of these are my new characters that I'm leveling right now. And I have, let's see, 8 characters that are in ships that will get free upgrades to T5 upgraded. And then 6 characters that I will have to purchase upgrades on. So I don't know. I looking at the system, looking at the dev blogs, looking at the comments made afterwards by the devs, I'm pretty comfortable with it personally.
Honestly, at this point, I mean, I kind of want to see the Tier 6 ships before I make any final decisions, but I think probably at least 4 of my characters, and I have 6, are going to remain in their Tier 5 ships and upgrade.
What about you, Dave?
I'm only going to really upgrade one, my main character. That's all I really need.
Now, they did mention that, you know, if you kept your T5 ship and didn't upgrade it, you'd still be able to get by. So, I wouldn't worry too much about that.
Well, yeah, the only issue I see with that is you're not going to have the special bridge officer slot.
Which we don't even know what that is yet.
Well, yeah, but, you know, I've already got a fleet ship, which already has 10 consoles.
Yeah, and then you can upgrade it to 11 and then.
You know, so I don't think it's a real big deal for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I might put my main in a Tier 6 ship and my KDF officer who's in a Moog right now, but there isn't anything about her that's really attached to the Moog, so I guess she's potential. Everyone else is kind of has a theme around their ship. So they're probably going to stick with the ships they have.
Now, I kind of stumbled across an idea, is if you're going to have a T6, or no, a T5 upgraded ship, you might as well level a T6 ship as well, because these ships will have levels. Level that up to 5 so you can get that trait, unlock that trait, which you can then slot on your captain and use on any ship. So I would level both at the same time. The only question will be is how fast will it be to really level these ships from 1 to 5 or 1 to 4?
I don't know. I don't know if it's a case
we
of...
don't know that yet.
I don't know if it's they're built around the leveling experience you have going from 50 to 60, or... I don't know. I mean, we don't even know what if all the tier 6 ships will be C-store, or if there will be some
That's
free
definitely a
ones,
big
or
question.
yeah, I mean, so yeah, just a lot of unknowns. So
A lot of unknowns, and I think probably a lot of things that won't be answered until we see them on Tribble, and as we all know, they can be changed when you see them on Tribble. But that is the news for today. So let's move on to what we've been working on. Dragoon, let's start with you.
well, I've been working on part 2 in amongst crystalline entity stuff. Mostly I've been working on costumes, trying to assimilate in the vast wealth of costumes that Zero provided. I'm actually at the point where I think I've got just about everything upgraded I want. Everybody who should be is in their Odyssey uniforms. I gave the Eidolon soldiers a pass, just because I had more non-aligned options now. Actually, I have 2 versions of my security team now. One where they're still in like a standard Odyssey uniform, and one where they're actually in combat armor. And I gave the combat armor a nice pass, which I showed last week. Other than that, I mean, not too much. Started working on some of the dialogue on one of the maps, kind of just tweaking things and trying to include a couple of elements that I kind of felt that I ignored. Nothing that's going to change the story or anything, but just kind of adds a little bit more dynamics to the conversation.
Sounds good. I know everyone's eagerly awaiting the release of part 2.
Yeah, I think once I can finally get through and do like a polish to my expectations of for the dialogue, and just get like weeding out any like egregious typos that I see, and if I can see them, they're pretty bad. And then once that, I'll probably release it as officially released, and then kind of just let other people take a whack at it and start cleaning up other typos as I run into them.
Well, if you need anybody to make editing passes, I'm sure we can find some volunteers for you.
Oh yeah. It's a funny thing. It's actually because of the people who have already kind of tested it out and play through. It's still in review, but it already qualifies for rewards.
It's all about average play times.
But yeah, of course, I asked everyone not to review it so it wouldn't move out into general.
All right. What were we going to say?
I was going to say, what about you?
Me? Well, actually, I'm going to show off a little bit of what I've been working on later on in the show. Because I've been doing I haven't been in the Foundry lately, but I've been doing a sort of different kind of UGC, which is player housing over in the Old Republic, because it just came out, which has been a lot of fun. But I will show that off later. Dave, we are actually standing in the thing that you've been working on, or one of them. So tell us about this here.
Well, I haven't been in the Foundry for a long time, but when I saw the patch notes here a while back that we could now tag a map as quarters, it got me to thinking, what do we not have in Stowe that just about every other game has? And of course, it's housing. Well, I decided to make my own quarters, so here we are.
I see. I've always kind of considered the player ship interiors as our housing. Admittedly, it's not very customizable, but
in a way,
I mean, that's the thing. It's a generic map. It's something that everybody has. This way, even though it's not a persistent map, we can kind of build it the way we want,
That is the advantage that the Foundry has over some of the other housing systems in other games, is so much customizability. I mean, you've even just started with a generic map here and turned it into a nice little apartment. Well, not little, actually. This would run you a couple thousand probably in rent in our terms, right?
Yeah. But it's a place. I had some of my fleet members in here last night, and they all thought that it was just great. It would be a place that they'd like to live.
Excellent. Well, I want to talk more about player housing, but we will do it just a little bit later, because let's get to some mission reviews. Let's see, Dragoon, why don't you start us off?
Okay. I reviewed Dubious Gifts by westmetals. This was his first mission, and it was a fair attempt for a first mission. You're basically sent to the Bajor to basically attend as an official representative of the Federation for the Gratitude Festival, the Bajoran Gratitude Festival, which we'd kind of seen at Deep Space Nine. On your way there, you get as far as getting into orbit, and you find this very odd-acting Jem'Hadar attack ship in orbit, who you hail, but just kind of stalls, saying they're almost ready, finished, and they'll be on their way. Except that as soon as they leave warp, you find out that they have in fact kidnapped Kai Kira, and this kind of leads into a pursuit across systems and through a nebula, and trying to track down this Jem'Hadar ship. I'm not going to give away too much of how it ends. I will say, overall, the story there wasn't too much story to it. He does skirt any EULA violations by never actually showing Kira, but you do get her back. But it's kind of it ends up kind of being something of a misunderstanding. I would say overall, like I said, I mean, not too bad for a first attempt. Map-wise, most of the maps most of the ground maps, or the two that there are mostly stock with not too much in the way of modification. He has a couple of space maps, most of which are actually pretty good. He has this micro nebula that you have to traverse that is actually pretty good, and it's very nice looking. Gameplay wise, it's pretty straightforward, no puzzles or anything complicated like that. In fact, really wasn't much in the way of too much trigger work either. I will say, well, the space maps I found pretty easy, but not like so much so that it felt unnatural. Ground gameplay, on the other hand, he had me going up against about 13 waves of Jem'Hadar soldiers, which became very tedious after a while. I think he could kind of cut that in half. Overall, like I said, it was a good first attempt. I gave it 4 stars. I mean, it's a fun little ride. I put it probably on par of like one of the Cryptic launch missions. It's kind of in that kind of vein as far as setup and whatnot.
That's a good baseline to shoot for, though.
Yeah.
Your first-time author.
Like I said, it's a good start. I'd like to see him kind of play around more with building up suspense and having what things appear to be not necessarily how the way things are. Have some mystery in his storylines.
All right. Let's see. I've got 2 missions to get through here. I have started back up my thread asking for people with missions below 5 reviews, and we got some interest here. I've got 2 missions that were submitted. They're actually by 2 different authors. I think they were done for a Fleets contest. So here we are. The first one is Deep Space 27 by Radioactivitii. This one, as you were just alluding to, begins with a mystery. So we do like some mysteries. A space station called Deep Space 27 has been reactivated, but you don't know why, and you are set to investigate along with another ship. Now, here's a sort of a general thing that I find lacking in a lot of missions, which is necessary small pieces of dialogue that tell me what's going on. And I kind of call this connective tissue in stories. So here's an example. when you first warp in, there are immediately some hostile Romulans and some friendly ships, and there's no explanation given as to why either is there. Now, I get it's a mystery, and you don't want to reveal why exactly the Romulans are there. But in this instance, what I really need is a small piece of dialogue saying, there are Romulans around the station, sir. They're moving to attack, instead of just nothing. There's hostile Romulans there. I need to go shoot them. I need to know why I'm shooting them. And it lets me know what's going on, and is also a way to make it feel like I'm the captain. I'm receiving vital information from my bridge officers, like they would in the shows. You know, Captain Picard and the Enterprise, they warp into a system. There's a Romulan ship there. They don't immediately go start firing at it. Somebody says something first. Because, you know, Romulan warbird off the starboard bow, it's turning to attack or something like that. Makes it feel a little more Star Trek, as we were discussing last time. Small touches like that. And the mission, this mission in particular, was lacking a lot of this overall. And a lot of the times I would get a new objective with really no explanation as to why I should be doing it. Say if I'm directed to go scan something, I kind of want to know why I'm scanning it. And it's a very simple thing to add, as simple as just one line of dialogue saying, Captain, I think we should scan this object for clues. But you have that before the objective, not after. This mission also had some problems with enemy density. The first fight in space was 2 frigate groups, a cruiser group, and a battleship group all on top of each other. With Romulans, that equates to a lot of plasma torpedoes. The unexplained Allied ships did not last long at all, and this kind of balance was repeated throughout the mission. Combat balance is obviously, it's a very difficult thing to get right, but I personally, I think the best way to do it is to limit the number of mobs that are in range of each other. To probably 1 or 2 for most fights, and if you want a really difficult fight, you know, you have maybe 1 or 2 difficult fights throughout the mission. And you put maybe a couple together, give people some help, make it a big epic thing. Let's see, map design was pretty good on this one. You spend a lot of your time on a Deep Space Nine interior, which he did kit out with a lot of custom objects, lots of crates and things like that. There were several problems with force fields that were not actually keeping the enemies out. The author might try to put up some invisible walls with those force fields as well, or move the enemies further away from the force field so they don't try and aggro and start shooting my guys through it. The story was pretty straightforward, even though there was an attempt at a plot twist. It kind of fell flat. It was one of those that was sort of telegraphed through the whole story. But that's okay. Plot twists are very, very difficult to pull off well, as M. Night Shyamalan could tell you. But I will say this: it was a solid mission. Mechanically, everything worked. All of the trigger things that he did, disappearing and reappearing objects, all of that was done well. All of that went off without a hitch. So what he has here is and also the next mission will also have, is a very solid foundation. And I think things could be tightened up. You could lose a lot of the combat mobs in there, and have just kind of a tighter story, and it could really move up to be a good 4-star mission. The next one is The Last Outpost of the Tai'Ameh by rileypasty. So in this one, you are supposed to aid an alien race that has just lost its leader. On warping in, you find several ships of this race are being threatened by the Breen. Now, the combat balance was better in this one. In the very first engagement, he had 1 frigate group that was by itself and 1 cruiser and frigate group together. Cruiser and frigate groups together are not a problem. I think what you go for with combat balance, as far as I'm concerned, is to have a good fight where I'm using all of my abilities, I'm challenged, but I'm not dying a lot. That's the goal for me with combat balance. Because dying over and over again is tedious and annoying. Now here was another mission that had trouble with that connective tissue issue. When the battle was over, there was no dialogue, and the objective only said escape. The only clue is that there was a little marker around one of the ships on the minimap. And I figured out it was actually a talk to contact ship. I have to talk to that ship. And the objective gave me no clue about that. There was no dialogue to give me any clue about that. So what I would do is, all of it's just a buff that says, I suggest we hail this ship, Captain. A lot of the time, it's just one little line of dialogue is all you need to make that to flow a little bit better. One of the things, this is a general thing for all authors, is that this particular author uses small asteroids as interact objects in space throughout the episode, but he did not rename them. So it just has the small asteroid 01 or whatever it is right next to it. Something that I forget a lot, but it's something that sort of ruins your immersion. So whenever you do that, always make sure you rename your interact objects. Let's see. He had a lot of short maps, maps where you go down for one line of dialogue and then beam back up. These could be done away with and just to get rid of those map transitions. Or the alternative is to flesh out those short maps even more. And one in particular where you beam down to a space station, and this is supposed to be the last surviving outpost of this race after the Breen got through with them, is that's a good opportunity to give us an idea about this race, to have some dialogue and some other things to help us learn about this race. And it's I think it's very important when you do invent a new race that you give us the opportunity to learn about them. He had some instances of where you come out of warp and enemies are literally right on top of you, and then a map dialogue starts. So there's really not enough time to properly read that dialogue, and you're going to miss vital info that way. So one of the suggestions I would have is set the enemies to spawn after the dialogue is over. This would be a good time to remind people that respawn points are important, especially if you have a very long map. So don't forget to lay down some respawn points. Now, like your mission that you reviewed, Greendragoon, this one had a map where there was just a ton of combat mobs, one after the other. This one had a 13-kill objective. You did get a little bit of help, but these were, they were very spread out, and it just took me forever to get to them all.
I don't know, I kind of suspect in some cases an author will do it to slow down the player and make the playtime longer.
Possibly. There could be any number of reasons. They just like space combat. Who knows? A lot of times authors build it to their tastes, not necessarily realizing that that may be a bit too much. Or the other option. I think what I would suggest, because what he's looking for is a big battle here, is to put them a little bit closer together and spawn a lot more friendly mobs to help. Makes for some great, fun, big battles, and goes a little bit faster. But also what he has here, just like the first mission I reviewed, is a very solid mission. Everything mechanically works. A lot of the map design does work. And really, it's just a good base to build from. And it's, tightening up the story, putting this connective tissue in, maybe doing away with some of the excess combat mobs that aren't really essential to the story and are just there to draw things out. And I think another one that could move up to a solid 4-star.
All right.
We actually lost Dave off the call here. He may be having trouble with his internet today.
See if I can get him back here.
He's dropped out a couple times now.
Well, you notice he's gone from the mission too, so.
Hotel Wi-Fi reset.
All right, he's back. Okay, let's move on. Let's talk a little bit about player housing. So, Dragoon, once you queue up that video, I have decided to make a small video for you guys detailing some of the things about the player housing in other games. And then we'll talk about it as far as Star Trek Online goes.
Okay.
So, give it a play. The first housing we're going to look at is EverQuest 2. Now, the nice thing about EverQuest 2 is that it has a free-form system. You can place objects anywhere, and you can adjust them in almost any way. As I will demonstrate with this carpet here. You see, we can rotate it on several axes. Now, this can create some problems, as you can see with clipping. They have taken no steps to prevent that. You see, you can rotate it horizontally, you can rotate it in several vertical axes, like so. Move them up and down, which is great. As you can see, it's solid objects, so you can create jumping puzzles. People have a lot of fun with that. Now, you can also change the scale of objects. Now, here's Rift. I could not actually find, on whatever server I was playing on, I couldn't find any particular great-looking houses, but I wanted to showcase Rift because it has just some absolutely great environments for housing. Take this one. It's just this crazy-looking evil dimension kind of a thing. And here we have like a little mountain retreat kind of a thing. This little house here. And we've got this island in a lake with a little lighthouse. And this is the very basic one. Here we are in Lord of the Rings Online. Lord of the Rings Online has a hook system. We'll explain that as we go. This is my guild hall, actually, over in Lord of the Rings Online. I have a personal guild, and we have this nice big hall. There's 4 different areas that you can get a house in. This one is in Breland, so it's a human-sized house. You can also get hobbit and dwarf and elf houses. There's places where you can put things on the exterior, as we just saw. And here's the interior. One of the nice things about the Lotro housing system is that you can choose the paint on the walls, and floor textures, and some of the ceilings as well, I think. You see what it is. It's got various places, set places around the house where you can place different sized objects. You see the fireplace in the middle there. Here we are. Decoration mode. Unfortunately, I don't have any decorations in my inventory, otherwise I'll show you how to place those, but there's various sizes, large floors, large walls, small walls, things like that. You can see all those maps I have there. There's a carpet. Some of these you can earn in-game, some of them are crafted, I believe, and available on the auction house. Now, you can't move the objects around in the in their slots. However, you can rotate them, as demonstrated with the big bear there. The Lotro houses are set up in neighborhoods. There's a set amount of houses per neighborhood, and you just pick one, and you could be surrounded by your friends. You could be surrounded by total strangers who also have houses in your neighborhood. All right, we move on to the Old Republic, which also has a hook system, a little bit more advanced hook system, as we'll show in a little bit. This is my Dromund Kaas stronghold, home of the Sith. So it's a very evil place, and here I want to show you this is a work in progress, I should say, but this is my throne room. Got my Imperial troopers there. And my throne and torches. And here we have a little lounge that I've started building. And these are going to be specific rooms for different types of Sith and for my Imperial agents as well. But we don't have much in there yet. One of the coolest things about Old Republic houses is these balconies. Dromund Kaas is always raining, so here we are out in the wet. We've got a little landing pad here. You can kind of come back. You can see the throne room through the window there. This is one of the other strongholds. This is on Nar Shaddaa. You can see neat holographic trees there. This is cool. I've started a room for my smuggler. And a room for my bounty hunter. Now you can place companions in there, but if you're logged onto a different character, they appear as holograms. It's generated some controversy on the forums, but hey, what doesn't? And here we have the beginnings of my Nar Shaddaa nightclub. See the creepy statue there in the middle with the dancing girl, poker tables, or gaming tables, I guess, and bars and holographic signs. And down here is my speeder garage. You can place all of the speeders that you earn in-game into your stronghold across all your characters. We've got a couple of pod racers there, a bunch of different speeders. Now I'm going to show you the hook system. These are all the different places you can place various sizes of objects. And what's nice is, if I select this one here, I can actually change the configuration of the hook. See, I've got 4 small ones, 2 small ones and a medium-sized one, and a big one. So you simply select which thing you want to place, and hit place. And then you can actually move them around and rotate them inside that hook a little bit. Allows you a greater degree of customization than the Lord of the Rings Online ones. You see there's hooks on the ceilings, hooks on the walls. Now you earn objects to place in your house in a variety of different ways. Obviously, there's some on the microtransaction store, some different bundles, plus you can get some out of lockboxes. And you can also earn them in various ways in-game. There's some that drop in flashpoints. There's certain trophies that you get for completing the flashpoints in operations. Operations is the name for raids over there. And you can also earn them through crafting. You craft various modules of about 6 or 9 different kinds. And you turn them into crafting guys, which will then give you different objects. See, I like how I've got this laid out because it's like you dock your speeder down there, and then you come right into the nightclub here, and then upstairs is living quarters for the people who own the place. This one's got a balcony as well, where you can look out on the city, and there's various things that sometimes float past, like that big party barge up there. We've got a few lounges out here. This only dropped, I think it hasn't even been 2 weeks yet, so I haven't completed everything yet. So I wanted to, real quick, run through a few of the housing things that have popped up so far in Star Trek Online. You'll be happy to note that the quarters tag is actually working. I searched by quarters and took the first 3 ones that I could find, which were all some form of housing or social maps or RP maps, whichever you want to call it. So this one is Risian Luxury Cruiser Interior by Oppulus. As you can see, he's used one of the Starbase interiors for a rising cruise liner, which I think fits very well. He's got all sorts of interacts, all sorts of people to talk to. He has utilized a lot of the available space to do a lot of different things. And he's used several maps as well. This is essentially, I'm not sure if he called it a holodeck or, just sort of a created interior within the ship, but it's a little beach resort area. He has used the Risian map, so you can use your swimwear. And the final map he's got, which he calls his nightclub. Now I think I would have populated it a bit more. And there we go. So when you're doing these missions, please remember to tag them with quarters by itself and leave a nice review. Our second housing map is Alps by JG07. So he's got a sort of an alpine house here, a cabin. Open door and go inside. Door closed there. We got a nice bar on that side. Great use of those windows. Those are the only windows we have, really. But can't go out there yet. We've got a few objectives in here, some interacts. This is my favorite. Yeah, lighting the fireplace. What great lighting it gives that. That just makes it absolutely awesome. Let's slide open the door here so we can take a little look outside. Nice patio area overlooking some great scenery there. And we got an upstairs. Now, here's where I'd have some advice for him to lower the height of each step of those stairs so that you could actually run up them. Takes a little bit of trial and error to do that. We're lighting some candles here. It's great lighting in these rooms, these light objects. There's only a few light objects that we actually have access to, but they can be used very effectively. It's a nice little console area there. After all, we're in a high-tech age. We need a computer station, even in our Alpine console or Alpine cabin here. Turn the lights down. And that's it for that one. And so your housing map doesn't need to be big or expansive in any way. It just needs to do what you want it to do. Our third and final housing map for the evening is just called House by Minolaos. This is sort of a Bajoran-themed map. You can see he's used those Bajoran doors as archways. That's kind of ingenious. It does have that big Vulcan symbol in there with some interesting fires surrounding it. Throws off some great lighting, of course. Some different areas with consoles and some cargo there. And some nice balconies. See what map he used. He used the Risian map, so I'm sure you could use your swimwear here as well. Some lounge chairs on this one. And I should say I like the look of this one, but there isn't all that much to do in it as far as interacts or talking to people. He's also included a couple versions with different skies. This one has a more night-looking sky, even a different one than the last one. And also a day map, which is very nice looking. So that's just the first 3 that pop up on the list. There are many, many more, and we definitely look forward to what people are going to do with this particular tool. If you have a house that you'd like us to look at or like us to utilize for a podcast setting, just let us know. Post in one of our podcast threads, and we'll get to it. Thank you very much.
Okay, we're back.
We're back. Okay. So that's kind of a quick overview of some of the other housing systems in other games. I think Stowe has a bit of an advantage over that in that ours isn't strictly a housing system. It's essentially just, the full Foundry, which gives us a lot of options. So, Dave, why don't you take us on a tour of your apartment here that you've built?
I'd be honored to. It's basically a 2-bedroom apartment. This room here is just a small guest room. Nothing much in it. It's a lot to place material, but small guest room here. Master bedroom is over here. Set up inside the master bedroom is the same as the small guest room.
A little bit bigger, I think.
Yeah, it is bigger. So, you could come in here, set up some chairs and whatnot. Make it a little reading room. I think we need a lot more assets. I would like to put like books and stuff on the shelf in the bedroom.
We do have some pads, but they're horizontal. Couldn't really put them on shelves, I think.
You can't really put a bookshelf.
We got that one asset that's kind of got that, what I call like a holographic bookshelf. Like one of the science assets.
Yeah.
That's true, yeah. It wouldn't necessarily fit with your theme, though, here, would it?
No.
I don't know. I mean, it's one of those things that you can only really ask for things that are actually in the game.
I don't think there's a lot of bookshelves around.
Living room, game room.
Dabo table.
Custom built fireplace, Dabo table, pool table.
Somebody has found a use for the tiny Jeep. That is awesome.
Yeah, it's like a little toy or something. Yeah.
Absolutely brilliant. Now I'm trying to think what the changes were from when I first looked at it.
When you reviewed this, that small bedroom was not there. The Dabo table and the pool table were over there in that section. The door was gone. And a lot of the wall decorations and the plants weren't here. I've since hired an interior decorator, you might say.
Now, I'll tell you, here's something that I did not realize, is that these pool sticks are actually physics objects.
Yep, so are the pool balls.
You can move them around to a certain extent. They seem to be stuck on the floor now.
Now you've got them all over the floor now. But yeah, I didn't realize that either until just now.
So let's see, you have an interact here. Check the fireplace. Kneel in front of the fireplace, that's a good one. I like it when people add like little interact things to their housing missions. Just a little added layer of fun.
Well, it's
certainly not necessary.
No, it's not. But, it gives you a little something to do. It helps you look around. And, I was seeing people saying they like the fireplace, but nobody ever mentioned why would you have a fireplace on a starbase. So I put the interact there, so you're checking for heat or smoke, and you're not seeing anything. So obviously it's a holographic fireplace.
Makes sense to me.
It doesn't have any fuel.
Yeah.
It's just burning there out of nowhere. Good use of the Earth Space Dock planter over here.
Basically, that was to fill space, so it didn't feel so empty. And it worked.
It's a good advice
same thing
for
me.
anybody who is building custom interiors is, use planters, use different things to fill space. Otherwise, they can feel very empty.
Yeah, that's the same reason why you see them in this here, which is the kitchen dining room. You got your big table for lots of guest parties, dinner parties. Small breakfast table over here in the corner, next to this door that goes to the room that was never seen in any series.
It won't be seen here.
As we both run into it. So that must be the bathroom back there.
I believe the head is
Yeah.
the correct term.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There we go.
And what every Starfleet officer needs for their own apartment is a little office.
Excellent. With trophy rack there as well. Now, one of the suggestions that I would make to you is that I think there are some interactable versions of these new ESD chairs, so you might look to see which ones of those.
Yeah, it's one of the standard
the
ones.
Chairs the chairs that are around the poker table, there's the interactable version of those. This chair is the chair Quinn sits in, which doesn't have an interact yet.
Oh, that one doesn't have a version. Okay. But you do have one of the awesome holographic consoles. I absolutely love these things. I remember Taco saying something that was like an experiment, putting those in to see if they would actually work in the Foundry, and thankfully they do.
Yep.
I love them.
Asset objects carry over their animations, whereas stuff baked into map does not.
Yes. Now, you used one of the generic Federation interiors, right, for this?
Yes.
The ones
That
with the big
was,
giant hallways.
Federation 02, I believe.
Oh, very well done. Now, you have another one, another housing mission.
Yeah.
What is that one like?
Well, it's 3 different maps. You start out basically on the starbase, you're signing paperwork, and then you beam down to your new property, which is a physical property with a great big house and a guest house. You've got a shuttle pilot, a groundskeeper that's going to take care of all the plants. You kind of look around the place, and then you go inside to tour the little house, where you've got your chef, your groundskeeper, you've got somebody from a bartender from the academy who's going to keep your liquor stock full, things like this. But it is another big place. It would be more for like a flag out or a flag officer instead of a ship's captain or something.
Very cool. Well, I don't know. So a question for you guys. We've gotten one tool that helps with player housing, which is the quarters tag, which I'm very glad to say works. And so, I mean, what other tools could we use that would benefit player housing? That use of the Foundry.
I suppose maybe like a favorite sort of a deal, where you like choose one mission that's been tagged as a player housing, and then that attaches the that map or project to a mission door, like on your bridge, on your ship, or in a starbase.
Yeah, I've been kind of thinking something along that lines. Like, we've got the Foundry Spotlight. Why can't we have something like a housing spotlight, like once every 3 months or so, a spotlight mission or a housing map that has like 4 stars or 4.5 stars gets submitted to Cryptic for them to review.
That's a great suggestion. I mean, we've seen some truly incredible RP maps. You probably remember, Dragoon, that high-rise apartment one that we did a show in. I mean, that spotlight material, absolutely. So, I mean, that's a great idea. What comes to my mind is the ability to allow more than 5 players in a map at one time. Because that's, I mean, obviously that's the limit we can do in Foundry missions. But, I mean, if you're doing something with like a fleet, and you want to make an RP map for your fleet, you can only have 5 people in it.
Right.
Yeah,
That,
definitely.
It's not a it's a problematic thing, because you could see how it, I don't know, getting more than 5 people in an exploit mission would be a bad thing.
Well, I mean, I would say almost that you would almost need your own type of Foundry map for this, like a special type of project where you can't do anything like you don't have the ability to place enemy mobs or something like that, or there's like no objectives or something like that. So certain aspects of the Foundry are unavailable, but at the same time, it can support more players, and might even be like savable, so you can like access it from a specific location. So I don't know, what I'm describing is like an entirely new system that doesn't currently exist. So it goes under the massive caveat of don't expect this to show up soon.
Chance of
I know. I guess
Jinrai in the chat room says stow cribs. Yes, that's absolutely.
Yeah, he's one of my fleet members.
Yeah, I'm not sure what you could do. I mean, more on a more practical sense with the system we have.
You know, I mean, other than more assets, obviously.
Yeah.
You can always use more assets, no matter what you're doing.
Well, let's.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was going to say, what kind of assets? I mean, keeping it within the scope of things that are actually in the game, what kind of assets could we use that we don't currently have?
Well, I could tell you one thing. I mean, the only complaint I really liked that that Alps map that I showed you earlier on the video. The only complaint I had is that the walls didn't look like they belonged in a mountain cabin. So I don't know, maybe if there was some way you could get some more wood-looking walls, and maybe you could get them off some of the Vulcan stuff, like some of the buildings the buildings we have in the Foundry, if you could make walls out of some of those.
Well, yeah, that's I would really like.
Because we're limited in the material of walls that we have. Most of the walls are either rock or, high-tech ship walls.
Now, I'm trying to think, do we have any missions in Stowe currently that take place within a wooden structure?
Not within, but I'm thinking you could. I mean, if you were good with 3D modeling, which I am not, I should say, I've tried it and failed miserably. You could slice up some walls out of the exterior walls of those Vulcan buildings. Maybe, I don't know. It's probably more work than anyone is willing to do at this point, but it would certainly be beneficial. Now, if you want
an asset that I would like is actual windows.
Yes, now there's a good one.
Yes, absolutely.
We could have like what the starship windows are like on a starship, so we can make a cabin on the ship, or something here on the starbase, where we could look up and see the bottom of a mushroom. Even real windows, so we can make a house on a planet. It's really hard now placing the glass just right so that you can get it covered up and make your own window that way. It'd just be a whole lot easier if we just had windows.
Yeah, I mean, that we could. I'm sure.
Yeah, I think that's something. I can't remember if that made the top asset list, but I know it's definitely a big request that people have been making for a long time. Because the only things that we have that are labeled window is, you could see them in that Alps map. They were huge. They were like floor to ceiling windows, and they're not square. They're very strange.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and they've got that weird like angle to them that you kind of have to cover up. And it's either that or those long glass banner assets.
Yeah, I made a good one with that for Puri when I was making my observation lounge. I used like 5 or 6 of them with lanterns in between, and then walls cutting off the the tops and the bottoms. But obviously that, if we had real windows, it would cut down on a lot of work there.
Yeah. What about something like the captain's cabin from the player ship interiors, but maybe with all of the individual assets removed?
That would work.
So
Yeah.
it kind of gives you a basic space to work with, but then you can customize it however you want.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's an aspect to player housing that we haven't discussed yet, which is essentially creating a custom ship interior, which I know is something people have asked for a lot. And it's something that you can really do for yourself if you wanted to, using the Foundry. It's not like the drag and drop rooms thing that you have over in Neverwinter, but obviously you can create custom interiors. I mean, this interior we're in right now could easily be could easily be something out of a ship.
And we've in fact seen in the past. I mean, there was someone who built like 5 decks of an interior of a Miranda class ship.
Oh, absolutely. Those are some great pictures.
So yeah,
that would be great if they could give us a template. Like you said, with everything stripped out of it, and just play stuff as we want it to.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, and one of the things that we talked about last time is that we learned that all of those ship interiors are on the same map. So if they were to put that map in, that would be an easy way to give you that template.
Yeah.
And you could use any one or multiple parts of the ship interior that you wanted. And it would look just like the one that you can go to in game. That would be the advantage of that. And then you could add your own stuff to it.
Yeah, I remember Tumorboy talking about his concerns about that, and basically that every time they add a new player ship interior, it gets added onto that map. So how do they add it? If they add it now, how do they add it in the future? And I was thinking that maybe the way to do it is just to keep it simple and just call it like a player interior version 1 or fed player interior version 1, and then sometime in the future fed interior version 2 comes out, and it's got all the stuff that version 1 has in there, but it's version 2. I mean, we're Foundry authors, and so we're not people who get hung up on the fact that everything's not labeled pretty. So
no, we've been living with that since the beginning. So
yeah, it seems to me like if there's 2 versions of the player interior, one that has the stuff added in from seasons 9 to 15, I'm cool with that.
That would work for me.
Yeah. Well, I think I for one will definitely tweet Captain Smirk and suggest a Stowe Cribs show every so often. See if he'd be into that.
That's an interesting thought. And the tag, I mean, while it was not a huge amount of effort on their part to add in a tag, it definitely shows that it's on their minds.
Yeah. And we thank Zeronius Rex for that. So why don't we move it along? Dragoon, you've got a tech topic for us.
Yes, which is going to require me to switch over, so you guys keep everyone occupied while I'm doing that.
Keep everyone occupied. Well, we've had some releases on the new races that we're going to be seeing in Delta Rising. I think they're making some very interesting choices with that, especially these ones that came up last Friday, which is actually yesterday. 3-day weekend, you get a little off on your days. So I know the board cooperative is a very interesting one. I remember I tweeted something about it, and everybody was like, "God, I hope I'm not fighting more Borg." I'm like, well, it's a cooperative. Maybe you're not fighting them. Maybe they're on our side, or we're on theirs.
That's what I got.
The intelligence reports kind of implied that they were not set up as an enemy group.
Yeah. It's a very interesting ship design as well. It's like Borg, but like heavily modified.
It would be fun to see is that Borg ship design from the was it the Descent series or the Descent two-parter in TNG?
Yeah,
It was kind of
that
that
would be
Borg, but not Borg.
liberated Borg, as we call them now. Sir Boulevard, in particular, is very keen to start killing them off. Not sure why. He has much hatred in him.
Some people are like that.
I don't know. I remember that episode where Chakotay encounters them, and I had quite liked the episode, especially because, I mean, they were building up to when we first really saw the Borg, which of course was Scorpion, which is one of my favorite episodes, even in all of Trek, actually. The other one is, and I can't remember how to pronounce this exactly, so Octanti or something like that, which is another episode that I remember vaguely. I might have to go back and rewatch it. It's the one where Seven gets sick and gets multiple personality syndrome.
Yeah, I remember that one.
Yeah, something like she got infected with something that these guys had infected the Borg vinculum with.
Yeah, the Borg vinculum was basically infected and malfunctioning, and this was tying into her cortical implant and causing the problems. Yeah, I mean, actually, pretty good episode for Jerry Ryan in acting, because he has to play like all of these.
A very difficult
characters.
one. I was reading the background stuff on Memory Alpha, and it's apparently a very difficult one for, especially because one of the personalities was Ferengi, and she had a hard time with that.
Yeah, I think she's trying to buy the astrometrics screen from Janeway.
Yeah.
But I mean, she does a bunch of. I think she does a Klingon in there somewhere. I think she plays like a little girl. I think that's part of her kind of arc, that kind of where she starts to relate more to Naomi.
Yeah.
I think there's one where she plays someone who got a civilian that got assimilated at Wolf 359. So like all of these different characters. Anyway, I'm loaded up whenever you guys are ready.
Go for it.
So basically, the tech topic I wanted to talk about today was one that isn't that well known, and one that was achieved and then took a really long time to reproduce. And a lot of authors kind of tried to reproduce it. And it's one of the things that, since I've been working on part 2, there was this one section of the mission where I throw up this invisible wall grid, and the idea is to basically lock down the player and keep him from moving around, to kind of feel that he's trapped. The problem is that like half the time these walls would spawn and intersect with the player, and it would cause them to respawn, which is the same effect that we kind of known about but didn't have a really good reproduction method. So that kind of got me to thinking about trying to recreate that more consistently. So today I'm going to show you how to have the player basically force the player to respawn at a new point by dropping a bunch of invisible walls on top of them. All right, so let me bring up an invisible wall here. Let's do 40 feet. 40 feet should be fine. So one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and set up my trigger for the first one beforehand, because it is a royal pain to set up triggers after you've got like 40 objects. All right, so we're going to have it spawn on component complete, and this object I've got right here is actually a console I put down. And so component complete. Nope, you stay. Okay, so hook this up to the console. And so what I'm going to do is I'm actually create a bunch of these. Just keep duplicating until they're in a grid like this. So more or less, no matter where the player is standing, he's going to end up intersecting with one of these walls. And just to be sure, I'm going to duplicate all of these, flip it around, and I'm going to create a grid. So that is more than enough. You can see I've got my spawn point right here. I'm going to start. I've actually sealed off the doorway, heading out just to show that everything's working. Then I've got a respawn point here. Now the key with the respawn point is that they activate if the player is close enough in range, and once a respawn activates, it pretty much takes over, even from the spawn point. So in this case, you might be arguing, well, how do I keep them from just respawning at the spawn point instead of the respawn point? As well as once they're in range of this respawn point, they'll never spawn back at the spawn point. It's kind of weird like that, but you can kind of use it to your advantage. So you notice here I've got a gap here between the rooms, and the goal is the player is actually going to jump from right around here, and then end up in the respawn point in the next room. All right, so let's go ahead and give this a test. See if I achieved the results. And there's a lot of cool things that you can do with this. For one thing, it's an interesting fact that while the player will respawn, the bridge officers will not. And so this is actually a method of separating the player from his bridge officers. I've actually got a mission idea I kind of want to do that takes advantage of this. Okay, so we've got our console here. Let's go ahead and fire it up. Whoa, what happened? I am now in a new room. My bridge officers are gone. And if you look at the map here, you can see they're still in the room. So they're probably stuck trying to figure out how to get around this invisible mesh. You, on the other hand, were respawned and are now in the next room. And I've just teleported through a solid wall. So lots of cool things you can use that for just moving the player to another part of the map. Obviously, it has to be within range of the respawn point for that to trigger. Otherwise, I would have just been pushed back to the normal spawn point. But it can also be used to separate your bridge officers. So my captain is now alone. I can have him fight things. One thing I do recommend is, well, it's not so bad in the preview. Bridge officers are notoriously bad for popping through even walls to try and return to the captain. So in this case, if I was trying to separate the player from their bridge officers, I would throw down a couple of extra invisible walls, and I double wall them so that there's two of them. And the idea is that they might pop through one wall, but they can't pop through the second wall at the same time. And so that just kind of keeps them from getting out. And you can form a box if you want to, and to be really sure, but most of the time I think they'll try and take the most direct route. But I mean, your mileage may vary a little bit, and so you might have to adjust this to work a little better. But that, like I said, is a good way to teleport the player or separate the bridge officers. I'm sure there's a lot of cool things that people can do with this. Just keep in mind that if you do a mission where your captain is separated from your bridge officers, they are not as powerful as they normally would be, and so it's worth keeping or toning down your mobs, just so it doesn't overwhelm like a solo player.
When Pendra, the one who first came up with this trick, as far as I know, posted about it on the forums, I did some testing, and it's a good way to get around some of those maps that have areas that are inaccessible from each other. Like, for instance, the Defiant interior, which has a couple of decks. And the nice thing about that one is you can do the turbo lift. You can place a spawn point far enough from the turbo lift that you can do a respawn point on the other deck and do this trick and be able to get to that other deck.
Well, that's something to point out is in my testing, no matter even if the spawn point is closer than the respawn point will supersede the spawn point.
But you have to get close enough for the respawn point for it to trigger.
Yes, you have to get it. I'm not sure exactly of what its range is, so it kind of requires a little bit of trial and error. But you'll see a respawn point unlocked when your character moves into range of the respawn point. And Yeah, just it obviously will go too far and it won't unlock the respawn point.
Yeah. One map I figured out that is the pieces are too far away from each other for it to work is the Constitution, the TOS Constitution interior. I think you can get to the Jeffries tube, but you can't get out of the Jeffries tube to one of the other sections.
Yeah, and I would say that in most cases, you're probably still going to use separate maps just because in most cases you do want the captain to keep his bridge officers.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, other than that, I mean, I'm sure there's more than a few authors that are coming up with clever ways to utilize this.
Absolutely.
All right.
Well, excellent. Excellent tip for everybody. So let's see. Got some other topics that I've been wanting to talk about. So we've got the Delta Quadrant incoming. We don't really know what sort of how this will manifest itself, or if we'll have Foundry doors out there. But I was thinking about what Cryptic is going to follow up on a bunch of episodes. Obviously, they're not going to follow up on every single one. So I know what episodes of Voyager do you guys think would be interesting to follow up on?
Well, I for one would like to see Seska's son and see how he has grown up with the Kazon.
I have a feeling that we will.
I think so too. But.
Yeah. And one of the funny things is they did say in the Kazon blog that there was some new leader of the Kazon. And that's what everybody's speculating it is. It's
Half human, half Cardassian?
Half Kazon, half Cardassian.
Yeah.
So
Wait,
he turned out to not actually be Chakotay's son.
Oh, okay. It's been a long while since I've seen season 1.
I think that was season 2, if I'm not mistaken.
Something
That
like
the before time in Voyager. Before it got good with the Borg.
But yeah, I mean that's the speculation, and of course the other speculation is that this mysterious enemy that's causing all this trouble out in the Delta Quadrant is the Vaadwaur.
I hope it is.
And we did see some Vaadwaur in the trailer. It's a shot of them on the ground walking, so I hope it is, because that would be very cool. I always liked that episode. In fact, I just watched it the other day.
Well, that's an interesting thing, because, I mean, I'm kind of curious. It sounds like they're saving like the Krenim for later, because there hasn't been any mention of the Krenim.
Well, we still have 3 blogs to go, though.
Yeah,
as far
that's
as alien races go, and that's not to say that all the alien races we'll be encountering will be in those blogs. We do know that they are going to have lots of post-launch content that they're going to be adding later on. So there's lots of time to get the Krenim in, and I really hope they do, because I really like the Krenim. Year of Hell is one of my favorite episodes. But I'll tell you one episode that, if they don't do it, I think I might, in the Foundry, is an episode called Nemesis. This one, if you remember, was it's another Chakotay episode. He crash lands on a alien world where there's 2 races that are at war, and he joins one and gets sort of inculcated into this the propaganda machine of these other guys being the Nemesis. They're really ugly looking aliens, and they're obviously enemies, and he gets into this so much that he starts hating them along with these guys. And then he gets rescued by Voyager, who turns out has been working with these guys, and they're actually not bad. They just look bad. It was a very interesting episode. I'm going to link it in the chat room for everybody. And the good thing for the Foundry is the alien guys, the really ugly ones, they look a lot like Nausicaans. Nausicaans would be a great stand-in for them. So I think it'd be really easy to do. You could go back to this world. You could see how this war has gone. If you're the Federation, if it's a Federation mission, you could maybe try and put an end to the war. If it was a Klingon mission, maybe you could, force them to stop fighting and try and bring them into the Empire. If it was a Romulan mission, you could take one side or the other. A lot of different things you could do with that.
I can see that being a really good Romulan mission. Because, the Romulans are more closer to the Passions than, say, the Federation.
Yeah.
But can you imagine the effect of being indoctrinated on a Romulan? They'll hate with extreme prejudice.
Mm-hmm. They're very emotional.
That race that ages backwards.
Oh yeah.
I remember those. Yeah.
I don't remember that one.
It would be interesting
it's the one
to
with
see.
Tuvok.
Yeah. Be interesting to see how their encounter with Federation technology and Voyager in specific has affected their society.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of different ones you could use, do that kind of storyline with. Lincoln in Space in the chat room says he liked the plastic robots that B'Elanna brings back to life. I vaguely remember that episode. They were interesting looking robots.
Was that the automated personnel units?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
because I think Gecko was talking about them, so we may actually see those in
really?
Delta Rising. I personally would like to explore like one of those. In a couple of episodes they had ones where they're like this void space, where Voyager gets trapped or a shuttle gets trapped. Because they had the planet that was inside of a subspace anomaly, and then they had that void space that was would suck up all of your power.
Yeah. I remember that, and then they had to band together with some of the aliens in there to get out.
Yeah.
I remember that one. Which actually that that was always a strange episode to me because it was almost the same plot as Voyager Elite Force game. Just minus the hazard team part of it.
Yeah, obviously the setup was very. While it's also a pocket of subspace, all the reasons behind it and the enemies they're fighting are completely different. So the plot is completely different.
True. For that matter, you could do a follow-up for Voyager Elite Force.
Yeah, true.
You would have to be very careful about it so you didn't violate the EULA, but it could be done.
Yeah, it gets trickier with works like that. I think at best you can make vague allusions to things, but you couldn't. I don't think you could specify any characters, and I don't think you could. Obviously, you couldn't do anyone that looked like a character from that.
Well, the nice part is that there weren't really a lot of villain characters or anything like that. You were mostly just killing faceless mooks, to use the TV trope's name.
Yeah.
So it's not like if you didn't bring in any characters from the hazard team, then you were fine.
But I think you'd have to take one step where you couldn't actually make a reference to the hazard team. You might be able to do something like one of the security teams Voyager had on board, because then you're not specifically referring to a specific element of that story, but you're making it at that point you're still in the realm of coincidence. And just coincidence that it happens to be vaguely similar.
So what else?
Not undoable. It's just you would have to be careful.
So let's see what we got going on in the chat room here. Sir Boulevard says, remember Type 8 shuttles are always doomed in the Delta Quadrant. That's always a source of amusement for people about Voyager, is the amount of shuttles that got lost was probably much greater than the ship could actually have.
That's okay. I'm pretty sure that they had crew decks completely full of photon torpedoes.
Jinrai is asking, how old is Tuvok in 2410? Well, he was getting close to 100 years old during Voyager, so I'd guess he's around 130, somewhere around there.
That makes sense.
Mm-hmm. And we know that Vulcans
what, like,
live at least to around 200, somewhere around there.
So yeah, I guess he's about
he's middle aged.
Yeah, about a human equivalent, about 50.
Yeah, something like that. Lincoln in Space says you could have the demon planet duplicate the player's ship. I remember that storyline. It was sort of a 2-episode storyline. First, you landed on the demon planet, and then they had a great one where Voyager's going along, and everybody starts dying, and the ship starts coming apart, and you find out that they're actually a duplicate from this planet, and the real Voyager's still out there, and they pass by not even knowing that this ship had been there.
That was such a sad episode.
It was a little bit sad, yes.
Yeah, it's like they don't even get the opportunity to tell the real Voyager what happened. I mean, it's I suppose in a way it's very Star Trek, but at the same time, it's just such a sad episode.
It was a bit of a downer episode. I don't know, how could you do that in the Foundry though? That'd be difficult because if you duplicate the player's ship, I mean, you don't know what the player's ship is, so you would have to. I don't know. That'd be a challenge.
You would actually have to do the same thing that they did in the show, and that had never have the real player meet the duplicate. So
okay, so how about this? So how about this? It duplicates the ship and crew, but not the captain. The captain is yourself, and you don't know it for a while. And then odd things start to happen, and you have to figure out that, oh my god, I'm on a duplicate ship. Where's my real ship?
Yeah. There's also the episode where Voyager entered the nebula and got split into 2 copies.
Yeah.
And then the Vidians invade one version. That's where Harry Kim died.
Yeah.
The real one.
The real one. Have you seen the thread on the forums of saying that they should find Harry Kim's frozen corpse?
I'm not even sure how that worked, because theoretically both ships were occupying the same space.
They're both the real Harry Kim. But yeah, there is a frozen body of Harry Kim floating around out there from the Voyager that did make it. But the Vidians are an interesting one because you learn later in the episode Think Tank that the phage has been cured. So the question is, would they go back to being nice, normal people, or would they still be predators like they were when Voyager encountered them?
Well, I mean,
I think that Cryptic's going to visit that sometime.
Yeah, I think that's prime.
Possible.
That's prime material. I don't think
prime material.
That's it. I mean, there is still plenty of Voyager episodes that I don't think. I mean, Cryptic couldn't possibly get to them all, so I think there's still plenty of fodder for the Foundry.
Well, and that was the nice thing about Voyager is that it was one of those sort of episode of the week kind of things. So there was just tons and tons of new races, almost one a week. So there's just lots and lots of material there.
Now, I think what would be a good Foundry mission for somebody is, remember that planet that the Ferengi had ended up on, the ones that went through the wormhole in TNG?
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
What has happened since they were exposed by Voyager?
I can't remember the end of that episode. Did the Ferengi stay on the planet, or did they go somewhere?
No, they went into the wormhole, but it destabilized as they were going through.
Oh,
and
okay.
They never made it back.
Do we know that they never made it back?
Well, as far as we know, they never made it back.
Well, we only know that as they were going through, the wormhole destabilized, and Voyager couldn't use it because it didn't lead back to the Alpha Quadrant.
I mean, they could have ended up somewhere else.
They could have ended up somewhere else. Yeah,
they could have. Which is funny because that was a follow-up episode to the TNG episode with the bizarre wormhole negotiations and how they ended up in the Delta Quadrant.
But that would be good, something good for Foundry authors to explore.
Yeah.
Go back to that planet, and it turns out these people have become the Ferengi of the Delta Quadrant.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the contamination was already done. I don't think they would, even with the Ferengi gone. Although, weren't they doing something about having like they're supposed to sacrifice their gods, which they think the
Something
Ferengi
like
are,
that, yeah.
and then they get beamed out
At the last minute.
So yeah, it's a weird mishmash. So it's kind of anyone's guess as to which way it went.
Some of these episodes, if I haven't watched them, I forget exactly what happened. Because some of these, it's been a long time since I've actually watched them.
Yeah, I'm going through the journey with my brother, and unfortunately, we're only up to late TNG, so we still got to go through Deep Space Nine before we get to Voyager.
Yeah. Well, there's a couple of seasons there you could watch concurrently, if you wanted to.
We could, but we can only go through them so fast, and that doesn't reduce the time. Besides, it would be a royal pain to try and keep those two in sync.
Yeah, you'd have to get on Memory Alpha and look at the air dates and things like that.
Air dates, and then even then the star dates don't. I'm not sure how the star dates line up.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know. I still think of that as sort of the golden age of Star Trek, as far as I'm concerned. Is because you had late TNG and DS9 going at the same time, and then TNG ended. You had the movies going at the same time that there was DS9 and Voyager on the air. It was a great time, I thought.
Oh yeah.
Well, lots of good episodes.
Right about the time I was growing up. You wonder why I'm such a Trek fanboy.
You kids.
Got my Playmates tricorder right here.
I had a friend who had one of those. I'll tell you, what I used to do is I used to build sets in Lego. I had like a Lego bridge of the Enterprise. That was a lot of fun.
Now, you guys are making me feel old now.
Even that was still a long time ago.
I was
built several versions of Deep Space Nine.
All right, guys. Well, why don't we end it there for the afternoon?
Yes, ended with a Trek nostalgia trip.
Nostalgia trip. Actually, there's one little last thing I want to do a shout out to. Is sort of another form of UGC besides housing and the Foundry. Is Captain Smirk's monthly screenshot contest. He's got a great one going right now, which is people are posting shots of things on a view screen using their bridge. And just coming up with some absolutely fantastic stuff. One of my favorites is somebody looking at screen and and trying to find Waldo. There's a "Where's Waldo" on it.
I saw that.
Another good one is on a Galaxy bridge looking at the battle section as if they're coming in for docking. And just all kinds of great stuff, shuttle stuff. And our own Sir Boulevard has submitted one, a very cool one, looking out a shuttle window at, I think it's around Saturn, a battle with the Undine. So everybody check those out. They're awesome stuff.
Also, another shout out I want to give out to is a happy birthday to our community manager, Captain Smirk.
Yes, Captain Smirk.
Whose birthday is tomorrow for us and yesterday for anyone listening on Monday. Happy birthday, Smirk.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, happy birthday.
It's good timing for our cupcake operation there. So, Dragoon, throw up our contact info.
All right. If anyone wants to reach us, we can be reached at email at foundryroundtable@live.com. Occasionally, I poke Dragoon to check it.
Yes.
You can follow the podcast on Twitter at Foundry Roundtable. Drogan can be reached at Drogan1701. I can be reached at Greendragoon, and Markhawkman can be reached at Marhawkman. David, do you have a contact or Twitter contact?
Well, yeah, it's at DaveJL_99.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for joining us today, and we will
thank you for having
say
me.
good afternoon.
Good afternoon, good night, good morning. Hey, I got to count for baths, too.
Yeah, sure. And everybody enjoy your Labor Day weekend, which for you non-Americans is the day that we celebrate people who work by not doing any work.
Yay for no work. Or which I'll probably fill up with more Foundry work.
Good use for it. Good use for it.